They let me take the blame for their perfect child, never knowing I would decide how their world ends. My family always said I was too much, too quiet, too beautiful, too different. My name is Alara Quinn. I was the older sister, but never the favorite. That title belonged to my brother, Marcus. He was kind in public, golden in private stories, and protected at all costs. The night everything broke, the police stood in our living room. Papers lay on the table. My father's hands shook. My mother cried loudly, but not for me. Money was missing from the family trust. A large amount. Someone had moved it secretly. Marcus sat beside my mother, pale and silent. Then my father looked at me. He said my name slowly, like it hurt him. He said I handled accounts before. He said I struggled with jealousy. He said I had motive. I laughed at first. I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw it. Relief. They wanted it to be me. My mother nodded through tears. My aunt whispered agreement. Marcus stared at the floor. I waited for him to speak. He didn't. The police turned to me. That was the moment I understood my place. I was not the daughter they loved. I was the sacrifice they needed. As the door closed behind me, I did not scream. I memorized their faces instead. Some debts are not paid with money. They are paid with time. They did not send me to prison. That would have been too visible. Instead, they convinced me to leave. Quietly. My father said it was for the family's safety. My mother said people would talk. Marcus said nothing. He hugged me like a stranger. They wired me a small amount of money and erased my access to everything else. My name vanished from records. I signed papers I barely read. I left town before sunrise. The bus smelled like dust and tired lives. I sat alone and watched familiar streets fade. I felt hollow, not broken. At the first stop, I threw away my old phone. I kept my passport and my comm. Panic would not help me now. I rented a tiny room near the coast. Salt filled the air. I found work cleaning vacation homes. No one asked questions. People rarely do if you smile gently. At night, I replayed that living room scene. Not with anger. With focus. Marcus had stolen the money. I knew that. But more than that, I knew why they chose me. I was strong enough to survive exile. He was not strong enough to face truth. That realization changed everything. They believed silence meant weakness. They believed distance meant safety. They were wrong. I was not running away. I was stepping out of sight. And when you disappear on purpose, you get to choose how you return. I became someone new by being no one at all. My hair grew longer. I dressed simply. I listened more than I spoke. People trusted me easily. That was a skill I never knew I had. I worked days and studied nights. Law basics. Financial systems. Identity rules. I learned how stories are built and how lies are hidden inside them. I follow my family from a distance. News articles. Social pages. Marcus rose quickly. He took my place with ease. The stolen money built his success. I felt no jealousy, only clarity. One evening, an older woman named Irene noticed me reading legal books after work. She asked why. I told her the truth, but without names. She smiled and said revenge is loud, but justice is patient. She offered guidance, not sympathy. She taught me how records can change, how time makes truth harder to trace, but not impossible. Months passed. I saved carefully. I traveled under short-term work permits. I learned accents. I learned silence. Beauty still followed me, but I used it as camouflage, not currency. People looked, then forgot. That was useful. I created a second identity legally, then a third, each one clean, each one quiet. I stopped thinking of myself as abandoned. I was chosen to see who they really were. The golden child needed darkness to shine. I became the shadow that would slowly remove it. 5 years passed before I took my first step back toward them. Not as Alara Quinn. As an advisor. Marcus's company expanded fast and weak. He chased praise, not structure. I studied his work through public filings and private networks. The flaws were obvious. I applied to consult under a firm name he trusted. My credentials were real. My past was buried. When we met, he didn't recognize me. That hurt more than betrayal ever did. He flirted lightly. I smiled politely. I guided decisions carefully. I saved him millions. He praised me publicly. My family praised him. Each thank you tightened the trap. I did not touch their money. I did not accuse. I waited. I planted audits. I suggested reviews. I encouraged transparency. Truth does not need force. It only needs light. At home, I looked in the mirror and barely saw the girl they blamed. I saw a woman who understood timing. Revenge did not feel like fire. It felt like calm certainty. They believed the past was buried. They forgot who buried it. And graves, when reopened, do not ask permission before telling their stories. The collapse began quietly. An audit request. A delayed signature. A missing explanation. Marcus called me late one night, panicked. I guided him calmly. I watched him unravel. The board demanded answers. Old transfers resurfaced. Dates matched the night they blamed me. My parents appeared on screen during an emergency meeting. Fear aged them fast. I attended virtually, camera off. Voice steady. When the question came, I spoke facts only. No names. No emotion. Silence followed. Days later, arrest warrants were issued. Not for me. For Marcus. My mother tried to call Alara Quinn. The number no longer existed. I closed my laptop and stepped outside. The ocean air felt light. I did not feel victory. I felt completion. They built their future on my ruin. News traveled fast once Marcus was arrested. Headlines were careful but clear. The golden child had fallen. My family's name cracked under public weight. They tried to control the story. My father blamed stress. My mother blamed advisors. No one spoke my name, but I felt it hover between every sentence. I watched from a quiet apartment across the sea. I did not celebrate. I observed. Marcus called from jail using borrowed hope. He asked for help. He asked if I knew someone. He still did not ask for forgiveness. I declined gently. The board began, separating themselves from him. Investors fled. Friends vanished. The protection he always lived under disappeared overnight. My parents sold property to cover legal costs. The trust was frozen. Everything they feared began to happen, slowly and publicly. I received a letter forwarded through old records. My mother wrote that she missed me. She wrote that she always knew I was strong. She did not write that she was sorry. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Strength does not erase betrayal. At night, I dreamed of the living room where it began. In the dream, I stood silent again. But this time, the silence belonged to them. They had given me exile. I had given them truth. And truth does not need revenge. It simply waits until it is invited inside. I built my freedom on patience. They never saw me return. They only felt the truth arrive. And that was enough. The trial lasted months. Evidence stacked neatly. Marcus looked smaller each time he appeared on screen. He avoided cameras. He avoided himself. My father testified with shaking hands. My mother cried again, but this time for real. The court did not care. Facts spoke louder than love. I stayed invisible. That was my choice. People online searched for me. They asked where the blamed sister was. Rumors spread. Some defended me. Some doubted I existed at all. I let mystery protect me. I changed cities and continued working under my advisor identity. New clients trusted me. My reputation grew clean and strong. One evening, Irene visited me. She smiled and said my patience had paid off. She asked if I felt empty. I thought carefully before answering. I felt free. Freedom was not loud. It did not clap. It breathed quietly and let me sleep. Marcus was sentenced. Not harshly, but fairly. My family stopped calling. Silence returned, but it felt different now. They no longer held my past. I no longer held their future. I had stepped outside the story they wrote for me. And once you leave a lie behind, it cannot follow you into truth. Months later, I returned to my hometown. Not openly, just quietly. The streets looked smaller. The house felt empty. My parents had moved to something modest. Pride had costs. I passed the old school. Memories stirred but did not hurt. They simply existed. At a cafe, someone recognized my face. They asked if I was related to the family in the news. I smiled politely and said no. That answer felt powerful. I met my mother by chance outside a store. She froze when she saw me. Time stood still between us. She whispered my name. I nodded. She cried and apologized then. Fully. Without excuses. I accepted it quietly. Forgiveness does not mean return. She asked if I would come home. I told her I already had one. We hugged briefly. Then I left. I did not look back. That night, I stood under the same sky that once watched me leave in shame. I felt no anger, only closure. They had chosen their golden child. I had chosen myself. And self-choice, once made, never needs approval again. Life settled into rhythm. Work, rest, quiet joy. My name meant nothing to the public, and everything to me. I mentored young women who felt overlooked. I never told them my full story. I taught skills, not pain. Sometimes, I wondered if revealing myself would feel better. I imagined interviews and apologies. The idea felt heavy. I chose lightness instead. Marcus wrote once from prison. He apologized without defense. I replied with one sentence. Learn from this. That was all. I stopped thinking of myself as the betrayed sister. That role no longer fit. I was a woman who survived being erased. One evening, I burned the papers that tied me to the past. I watched smoke rise and vanish. Nothing dramatic happened. That was the point. Healing rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly, like sleep after a long night. I smiled and closed the window. The story they told about me had ended. The one I told myself had just begun. Years later, I stood on a balcony overlooking a city that did not know my name. I liked that. I thought about how close I came to breaking. How easy it would have been to chase revenge loudly. Instead, I chose patience. My family rebuilt slowly, without lies. They learned humility. I wished them peace from afar. I had no need to return. The golden child lie had collapsed on its own weight. I did not push it. I simply stopped holding it up. That was the lesson. Sometimes, the strongest revenge is removal. Removal of access. Removal of identity. Removal of control. I turned back inside and locked the door gently. The past stayed outside, and for the first time, I felt completely free. Freedom brought quiet days, but quiet can invite questions. One arrived through an email I almost deleted. A journalist asked if I was the forgotten sister. I stared at the screen for a long time. The truth had found me without effort. I did not reply. Instead, I went for a walk. The city moved around me like water. No one stared. No one judged. I liked that. But the question stayed. Was hiding still healing, or had it become fear? That night, I wrote my story in a notebook. Not for the world. For me. Every lie. Every silence. Every night I wondered if I deserved it. When I finished, I felt lighter. I realized something important. I was no longer hiding to survive. I was choosing privacy to live. That choice mattered. The next morning, I replied to the journalist with one sentence. I am not ready. They respected that. Power does not always mean speaking. Sometimes it means deciding when not to. I closed my laptop and smiled. For once, the story waited for me. Weeks passed. The email never returned. Life continued gently. Then Irene called. Her voice was careful. She said the foundation I worked with was being nominated for an award. Public recognition. Speeches. Cameras. I felt my chest tighten. This was not about the past, she said. This was about the work. The people helped. The change made. She was right. I agreed to attend, but under one condition. No questions about family. The night of the event, lights filled the hall. Applause rose like rain. I walked on stage steady and calm. I spoke simply. About fairness. About truth. About giving people a voice. The crowd listened. Afterward, someone whispered my name with curiosity. I did not confirm it. I did not deny it. I left early. In the car I felt something new. Not fear. Not pride. Balance. I had stepped into light without being consumed by it. That was growth. At home, I placed the award on a shelf beside nothing else. It did not define me. It only reminded me how far I had come. The past returned in an unexpected way. My father requested to see me. Not through guilt. Through honesty. I agreed. 1 meeting. 1 hour. We sat across from each other in a small cafe. He looked older. Softer. Less certain. He said he failed me. He said fear made him choose wrong. I listened. He did not ask me to forgive. He asked me to understand. I told him I already did. Understanding did not bring me back. It simply closed the door quietly. He nodded. Tears stayed in his eyes but did not fall. We spoke of simple things. Weather. Work. Time. When the hour ended, we stood. He asked if this was goodbye. I said yes. We hugged. Not tightly. Not coldly. Just enough. Walking away, I felt peace settle deeper than before. Some endings do not explode. They soften. And softness can still be final. After the meeting, something shifted inside me. The need to explain myself faded. I focused fully on the present. New projects. New friendships. A life shaped by choice, not reaction. I traveled. I learned new languages. I laughed more. One evening, I watched the city lights from my window and realized I no longer checked the news for familiar names. That chapter had closed. People often think revenge is action. They imagine grand moments. But the real victory was quiet. I had built a life that did not include them. That was enough. I wrote one last letter to myself. You survived being blamed. You survived being ignored. Never forget who carried you through. I folded it and kept it close. Tomorrow waited. And for the first time, it felt open. Years passed like calm water. One morning, I woke without weight on my chest. No memories chased me. No shadows lingered. I was free in the truest sense. The golden child lie was no longer a story I reacted to. It was history. I smiled at my reflection. Not because I won, but because I healed. Healing did not make me softer. It made me clear. Clear about my worth. Clear about my limits. Clear about my future. I stepped outside into sunlight that asked nothing from me. The world did not need to know my name. I did. And that was enough. Peace lasted longer than I expected, but life enjoys testing calm waters. The test arrived as a letter stamped with a familiar crest. It was an invitation to a public forum on justice and truth. My name was requested, not demanded. I sat with the letter all afternoon. Attending would mean visibility. Declining would mean silence. Both were safe. Only one felt honest. That night, I remember the girl who stayed quiet while lies were spoken. I promised her long ago that silence would never own me again. I accepted. The hall was full when I arrived. Faces turned with interest, not judgment. I walked to the stage slowly, breathing steady. I spoke about truth as a fragile thing. I spoke about families, fear, and courage. I never named names. I never shared details. I spoke only what mattered. The room listened. When I finished, there was no applause at first. Then it came, strong and respectful. I stepped down feeling lighter than air. Outside, the night was cool. I realized something important. Speaking my truth did not reopen wounds. It sealed them. I went home smiling, knowing the past no longer controlled when I spoke, or why. That choice stayed with me. It did not make me famous. It made me free inside. Freedom, I learned, is not noise or praise. It is standing whole, unafraid, even when the world finally listens. I carried that strength forward, knowing it could never be taken from me again by anyone ever. After the forum, messages arrived from strangers. Some thanked me. Some shared stories of blame and silence. I answered a few. I protected my peace. One message stood apart. It was from my brother. Not Marcus, the younger one who watched everything and said nothing. He wrote simply. He said he was sorry. He said he should have spoken. He did not ask to meet. I read the message twice. Then I closed it. Forgiveness does not require reunion. Sometimes it only requires release. Days later, I deleted the message. Not in anger. In closure. Work continued to grow. The foundation expanded into new cities. I traveled with purpose and rest. In a small town, a young girl asked how to survive being blamed. I told her the truth. Survive first. Speak later. Choose yourself always. She smiled like hope. That night, I realized my story was no longer mine alone. It was a bridge. And bridges are not built for return. They are built to help others cross safely. Understanding that changed me. I stopped measuring life by pain survived. I measured it by peace protected and people helped. The past still existed, but it no longer ruled my steps. I walked forward calmly, carrying lessons, not wounds, trusting the road ahead. It felt honest and earned, like sunrise after storms, steady, warm, and finally mine to enjoy fully without fear, without permission, without waiting for approval from anyone else ever who once doubted my truth and strength alone. Time softened everything. Even memories lost their sharp edges. I could recall the lie without feeling small. One afternoon, I received news that Marcus would be released soon. The message stirred nothing. That surprised me. I realized healing is when information no longer controls emotion. I wished him no harm. I wished myself distance. I moved homes again, not to hide but to grow. New walls, new routines, new air. I planted flowers on the balcony. Watching them grow felt symbolic and simple. One flower struggled. I moved it into sunlight. It recovered slowly. That was me. I wrote less about the past. I wrote more about possibility. When people asked about family, I answered briefly and changed the subject. My life was full enough without explaining scars. At night, I slept deeply. Peace had become normal. And normal felt beautiful. Beauty did not demand perfection. It welcomed truth, patience, and rest. I learned that surviving betrayal does not require hardness. It requires honesty with oneself and the courage to keep choosing life. Each day I chose calm. Each choice added strength. Quiet strength became my greatest reward. I stopped waiting for apologies that might never come. I stopped measuring love by blood. I built family through respect, kindness, and shared growth. That choice changed everything for the better. It felt steady and real, grounded in effort, trust, laughter, and quiet moments that healed deeply over time without fear, pressure, or expectations from the past that once controlled me completely. One morning, I woke with a strange thought. I was grateful. Grateful for the lie that failed. Grateful for the silence that taught me strength. Grateful for the exile that forced growth. Without it, I might have stayed small. I prepared breakfast slowly and watched sunlight move across the floor. Ordinary moments felt rich. I checked messages. None pulled me backward. I smiled. Later, I visited a school supported by the foundation. Children laughed freely. A teacher thanked me for believing in them. Belief mattered. I realized my life had become service, not survival. That shift changed how I carried myself. I was no longer reacting. I was leading quietly. The girl I once was would not recognize this peace. She would admire it. I whispered thanks to her for enduring what I could not. She deserved this life. And now, so did I. The future felt wide and gentle. I did not rush it. I trusted it. Each step forward felt chosen, not forced. I carried lessons lightly and hoped carefully. Nothing was owed to the past anymore. Everything ahead was mine to shape with intention and care. I accepted uncertainty without fear. I accepted joy without guilt. Balance replaced survival. Peace became practice. Life no longer felt like something to escape. It felt like something to live fully. Every breath confirmed that I had arrived, not at revenge, but at lasting freedom earned through truth, patience, courage, and quiet resilience that shaped me into who I am today. Looking back, the golden child life feels distant. It no longer defines any part of me. I was blamed. I was erased. I survived. But survival was only the beginning. I became something stronger than the story meant to make me. I became free. Freedom did not come from revenge. It came from refusal. Refusal to stay small. Refusal to carry shame. Refusal to let lies decide my worth. I learned that truth does not rush. It waits. It stands firm until the world is ready. When it arrives, it does not shout. It settles. My life now is simple and full. I work with meaning. I rest without guilt. I love without fear. The past exists, but it no longer speaks first. If someone tells my story someday, I hope they say this. She was betrayed. She chose herself. She built a life that needed no apology. That is enough. Enough was the victory. Enough was the peace. I closed the final door gently and walked forward without looking back. The lie ended where my strength began. And from that place, I lived honestly, fully and free. This ending did not need witnesses or applause. It only needed truth and courage. I carried both. They carried me. The rest of my life unfolded quietly, guided by choice, integrity, and the calm certainty of self-worth. I moved on without regret, without anger, and without ever needing to return again to a past that no longer existed for me at all.